Yes, children. So finally, what happened? So other countries, the many other neighboring countries, they started to worried about the activities or the growth of the socialism, what was happening in the Russia. So that is the reason they tried to support. But what happened? This USSR, that is the Soviet Union, was not happy with the support which they were getting. Okay, so which are the countries they were supporting? Britain, America, France, and the Japan were worried about the growth of this, the socialism in Russia. And later, what happened? After effects of civil war, so we have seen that the civil war started to happen. So what happened after the civil war? Effects. Let us see what are the effects of the civil war. Foreign forces looted Russian people. So the many foreign forces, what happened? They started to loot the Russian people. Many Russian people, they started to loot. You can see here. And then famine become common. So we know that there was already a famine, and the people were struggling a lot without food. The food was a major problem those people were suffering, and already they increasing in the products of the prices. So that was a common problem they were facing. And private property supporters took harsh steps against peasants. So the people who were supporting this private property, they have, because the private property has been abolished, the banned. So what happened? Those people started to take the harsh measures or the steps against this peasants, that is the agricultural people. And Bolsheviks controlled most of the former Russian empire. So the most of the Russian empire was under the control of this Bolsheviks. Okay, hope you guys are understanding. No, children? Civil war and effects of the civil war. Civil war happened, but what are the effects of the civil war? Many Russian people were, the Russian people were looted by the foreign forces, and then famine was a common problem. Private property supporters started to affect or influence this peasants, and then the Bolsheviks were the maximum, they were controlling the Russian empire. So the next we are going to see about the USSR, the Union of the Socialist, the Soviet Socialist Republic. The birth of USSR, centralized planning, economic growth, new reforms, and the global influence of Russian Revolution. So how this Russian Revolution influenced the entire world, and then how this USSR started. Centralized planning, the one single planning, how it helped for the economic growth, and what are the new reforms, the measures has been taken. Let us see. So the birth of USSR. Bolsheviks nationalized industries and banks, that we know that was a major demand of this Lenin. Peasants cultivated socialized lands. Of course, what happened? Peasants, the farmers, started to cultivate the socialized land because lands were redistributed. Lands confiscated for collective works. So even the collective work, the people joined together and they started to do the work. Okay, so that is the reason they started to call it as a Union of Socialist Soviet Republic. Okay, see here. The centralized planning. How they started to work? Centralized planning. See here. Introduction of centralized planning. They started to introduce the centralized planning. Officials strived hard to achieve target of 5 years plans. So guys, you can remember, even India, we follow this 5 years plans. Do you guys remember? So what happens? We'll give much importance for the particular objective, our aim, and we'll be planning for the whole 5 years to achieve that target. Okay, so same way, all the officials will be strived hard to achieve the target of that 5 years plan. So whatever the planning, they'll be made in the beginning of the year only for the whole 5 years to achieve that particular target. So that they started to do. That's the excellent work. And first 2 5 years plans implemented during 1927 to 32, and 1933 to 38. So you guys are understanding, no children? Centralized planning has been introduced and they planned for the 5 years plans. To achieve that 5 years plans, the officials and all were working hard, and the first 2 5 years plans we can see here. Government fixed all prices to promote industrial growth during first 2 plans. So to promote the industrialization, to promote the industrial growth, because that time only the industries were growing. Okay, so the industries were growing stage. So that's the reason they started to fix the, to support them, to promote them, they started to fix the prices during the first 2 5 years plan, that is 1927 to 32, 33 to 38. Okay. And next, economic growth. How this promoted the economic growth? Yes, because due to centralized planning. So as I told you people, what happened? Centralized planning, they started to focus on the one particular problems and they tried to help us solve that. And they started to plan even for the 5 years plans, and whatever the target they'll be having, that has to be achieved with that 5 years. So like that, what happened? They started to do the centralized planning, and then industrial production increased between 1929 to 33, 100% in oil, coal and steel. So as I told you people, they were even giving the fixing the prices for the industrial growth, to support the industrial growth. So due to that, what happened? Industrial production, the industrial growth, industrial production also increased to the 100%, that to 100% in some particular areas like oil, coal and the steel industries. Okay. And the next one, it is new factory cities came into being. So many, the new industries they started, new factories they started. So due to that, what happened? New factory cities came into being. So many areas they started to call it as a factory cities. They started to establish the new factory cities also. Hope you guys are understanding, no children, how this USSR started, and this, the implementation of the centralized planning, and then how the centralized planning started to help for the economic growth. Okay. And the next one, it is new reforms, new changes, new reforms they started. So already we have seen that the Lenin was, from the beginning we have seen, he was already aged now. So after the Lenin's death, Stalin headed the party after the Lenin's death. So after, once this Lenin died, Stalin from the same Bolshevik party, he started to take the head of this party and introduced firm emergency measures. So he started to introduce some firm emergency measures. What are those emergency measures? Let us see. Believed rich peasants and traders in countryside holding stock for higher prices. So he started to assume that. Okay, he started to assume that, you can see that in some rural areas, what happened? The poor peasants, at least for their livelihood, they will, whatever they are growing, they'll sell and they'll take the money. But here what happened? This rich people, they will be waiting till the prices increases, and then they will sell and they'll be making the profit. But already what happened? They have fixed the prices for the products or the goods, but they were not ready to sell, and they used to keep that and they used to sell it for the higher prices. But whether it was happening or not, that is different thing. But this Stalin started to believe that, he started to assume that the rich, the peasants are doing like that, some traders are doing like that. So that is the reason he introduced the method called collectivization. Okay, he introduced the collectivization because he started to believe that, he started to assume that some rich peasants and the traders in the countryside, they are keeping the stocks, and they are making the high profit when the prices are increasing. He started to believe. So that is the reason he introduced the collectivization. See here. Yes, children. So what do you mean by collectivization? See here. Collectivization program introduced in 1929. Guys, remember when it has been introduced? In the year of 1929. Party workers forced peasants to cultivate in collective farms. So what happens? Everyone has to work in the same land. Collective land. That they'll be called as a kolkhoz. Land and implements transferred to ownership of collective farms. So this land and whatever the implementation ideas will be transferred to the ownership of the collective farms. So finally they'll make it as a collective farm, and the peasants are forced to work in that collective farms only. So after that, what happened? When they're forced to work in the collective farms, many people started to resist that, and they started to react for that, because they were not interested to work in the collective farms. Okay, so some peasants resisted the collectivization. They were not interested to work for the collective farming and destroyed their livestock. So whatever the livestock was available, they started to destroy that, because they were not obeying, they wanted to show that they are not ready to work. Number of cattle reduced to 1/3 between 1929 to 1931. So many cattle were reduced. They started to destroy even that livestock and even the cattle also. And then finally what happened? The bad harvests and the deaths. So already there was a famine, so that we know that the people were struggling without food, they were starving. Yes or no, children? So due to this collectivization, production did not increase immediately. So as we know that, children, so whatever we are doing for the agriculture, we can't expect immediately the production will increase. Yes or no? So that is the reason what happened. Due to this collectivization, the production did not increase immediately. So due to that, the huge famine was there. Bad harvest between 1930 to 33 caused the famine. Over 4 million people died. So just think of the decision which has been made by Stalin. Almost over the 4 million people has died due to this bad harvest. Okay, so that is a very bad, the decision which has been made by Stalin. So the next thing we are going to see, that is the global influence of Russian Revolution. So how this Russian Revolution influenced the entire world. See, people believed in possibility of forming workers state in many countries. So the many countries also, they started to believe that it's a possible to make the forming worker state. So the worker state can be made, and communist parties formed in many countries, because the same way how this Russian Communist Party, they made the one single party for the country, same way many other countries were also influenced by this. And one example of that is Communist Party of Great Britain. Okay, one of the example is Communist Party of Great Britain. And Bolshevik asked colonized people to follow their method. So finally colonized people to follow their method. What they were doing, the Russian people were doing, the single party was doing, they started to ask the colonies to follow this. Okay, by this we are at the end of this chapter, children. So hope you all understood the chapter. If any doubts, any clarification, please let me know. I'm there to help you out. Okay, so by this we are winding up this chapter, and Monday we will be having a test for this chapter. Be careful, children. And this is a very important chapter, because the same chapter it is, and very important and the toughest chapter. You can just even see that. So it is there even for the 10th standard. So better you have to understand well. Okay, thank you all. study well, make your own notes, or else at least take down the same points. That's more than enough for you people.